everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Thanks for joining me on this Talk Crafty to Me video tutorial. Today I would like to show you how to create an acrylic block background. This is an old technique that's been around for quite a while, but it's kind of a fun one to do. This is the area that I'm referring to, that rectangular area. And it's really simple to do, and it's a lot of fun. Before we get started, though, let me remind you that we have two Facebook groups. We have the Bello's Design Lounge, and that's where we showcase all of our Lavinia products. The other page is the Bello's a la carte. There we showcase all of the other products that Patty currently has in her store. We are on other social media platforms, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. Come on over there and join us. Simply search the hashtag Bello's Design. Okay, even though it is impossible to recreate the acrylic backgrounds each time, you'll see that each time you do it, it will be different and you never know what you're going to get. To me, that's kind of the fun part about it. But I am going to try to recreate this entire scene for you. So let's first look at the supplies that we are going to need. So as I said, we're going to be using acrylic blocks to create that. And as you know, I hope, acrylic blocks come in various sizes and shapes. So it really doesn't matter. You know, use what you have. I have a variety. These are as old as the hills. I have a small square, a circular, a rectangle, and another rectangle, which is much narrow. Any or all of these work perfectly well for this technique. Now with this card, I used the rectangular shape. Let me show you another card I did a while ago. Here you can see where I used the circle acrylic block to create that. And I will go over the details of this one, but this is the only one we're actually going to make today. So that being said, here's what you need to create that card. You need a rectangular acrylic block. Also, what I'm using today is a heavyweight cardstock, 300 GSM. If you've been following me for a while, you know this is my preferred cardstock, anything that is 300 GSM or above, because it holds quite a bit of moisture. It will warp. I mean, you can overdo it, but it's pretty forgiving. I like to heat set it after I'm done using it with the heat tool, or you can let it sit overnight and put some weights on top of it to flatten it out and use it the next day. Either way you do it will work fine. You will need a piece of scratch paper for some grounding. The stamps that I'll be using today are all from Lavinia. I will be using the beautiful Fin LAV 603. The Florist set, which I can't tell you, you really need this one in your stash. These two work as great fillers. That's LAV 698. The Floral Wreath set, which I'm only going to be using the actual part of the wreath there. That's LAV 637. And I will be using the Orchard Grass LAV 672. The inks that I will be using today: Elements Inks in Bermuda, Russet Orange, and Graphite. I will be doing some other demos for you during this process. And for that purpose, I'll be using Distress Oxide in Worn Lipstick, Salvage Patina, and Mustard Seed. Another one that I will show you will use the Distress Oxide inks in Kitsch Flamingo and Hickory Smoke. For stamping purposes, I will be using all VersaFine Clair inks, Summertime, Morning Mist, and Nocturne. A blending brush will come in handy, or any tool that you like to blend with will work. If As you can see here in the wreath, I colored in the buds, and I actually painted with the Elements ink. So if you want to do that, you need a small fine tip paintbrush to color. I will be using my Misty stamping tool along with my air hockey puck. That's what I press my stamps into my paper, and water will be a necessity. Also remember to clean your stamps after each use, and really all you need is water and a microfiber cloth or some type of cloth that doesn't leave lint behind. Okay, let's get started. First of all, let me show you again. I'm going to try to recreate this background here with the rectangle. So let's start there. Then I'm going to set that aside to dry for a time. And I will show you with the other acrylic blocks, the ink combinations and what those backgrounds could look like. So let's start with this block. And I'm using the Elements Inks Graphite and Russet Orange. Keep in mind that these inks are extremely moist, so you really don't have to put a lot onto your pad. It's trial and error till you figure out how much you actually need or want. All I do is dab some small areas onto the pad or onto the acrylic block, just very randomly. Let me show you a little bit more up close when I say very randomly and very little. You don't need a lot because this is such a juicy ink pad. Then randomly, what I will do is place some of the graphite, kind of here and there. And now this is where your water comes into play. Let me move my card out of the way. The more water you spritz on top of this, the more water you're going to have. But it's going to be really messy if you add a ton of water. So I like to err on the easy side of spraying the water and not put too much. If you happen to put too much, it's an easy fix, not to worry there. But let's see how I do here. Let me just add 3 little sprays. And I'm going to move my ink around somewhat. And this is going to show me if I have enough water, which obviously I don't because I'm not getting a lot of movement. So again, always erring on the side of caution. Start with a light coat of water and then come in and add a little more. So I believe that was about a total of 5 spritzes that I did. Now you can see I have a lot of movement here. I can move it more if I just rotate my block around. Again, that's all up to you. Let me grab a piece of paper towel here, clean up the sprayed water. Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can place your card directly on top. I'm not going to do it that way today because I've already pre-cut the card to the size that I want it to be. So I am going to just lift the acrylic block, flip it, and place it as close to the center or the area that I would like it to be. Now, there is a possibility because this water is sat for a while, it's going to drip. So what I'd like to do, if I haven't moved immediately, is I will take my block, flip it over. If there's any big drips, they're going to fall at this point onto my work surface. I'm going to try to place this in an area that I think it's going to look good. Press down, lift up. All right, that looks good to me. Yes, I've got some uneven lines, but that's what I like. And I love when this kind of an area happens. Now, this is drying pretty quickly. Here where I live today, the humidity level is pretty low, so that's great for this technique. But depending on where you live, you might still have a pool of water here with all the ink. So you simply just take a paper towel and dab, and that would pick up and remove the excess water. So that's an example of a background that I could use. Now, I've already gone ahead and made a background with using these colors, and I let it dry for several hours. That's the one I'm actually going to be using. Let me show you how that one came out. Okay, same colors, but as you can see, You never get the same result twice. Okay, I'm going to set that aside though just for a minute because I'd like to experiment with you and show you what you can do with the other shapes of acrylic blocks. So let me demo for you with the round one. I like using the round one, especially if you're making wreaths. I just think it's kind of cool. Using the Distress Oxide Ink Flamingo. Now, mine are not as juicy as my Element ink pads are, so I'm going to press some extra ink onto that acrylic block. And I will bring in the Hickory Smoke and do the same thing. Once again, let me spritz. I am going to flip, maybe let some of that drop off if it's heavy, and then place this as close to the center as I can, down and up. The longer you let it sit there, the more ink you will get onto your paper. The quicker you remove it, you'll get more of an uneven look. And personally, that's what I like to go for. Okay, as you can see, I've got some pulling here. So great for the demo that I can come in with a paper towel and pick up that excess. Again, I love when all this extra occurs. To me, it just kind of gives it character and interest. So you can see here how neat it is to use a round acrylic block. Now, another one that I like to use a lot is the long, narrow, thinner rectangle. So let me show you what I like to do with that. So let me start. I'm going to be using the Distress Oxide inks again. I'm going to use Mustard Seed, Salvage Patina, and Worn Lipstick. I'm going to start with the Mustard Seed. Now this time I'm only going to add one color to my acrylic block. All right, again, my ink pad's somewhat dry, so I'm going to apply quite a bit. Spritz with water, shake off any big drops if they're there, and then place this more or less randomly onto my card, but I want to try to keep it as straight as possible. Lift. All right, I have a nice design there, soaking up that excess water. Next, I'm going to come in with the Worn Lipstick. Again, adding it to my acrylic block, spritzing with water. I'm going to shake off any excess strips and randomly place this. I'm going to try to overlap a little bit into that yellow. Lift. All right, I'm pleased with that. Let me clean off my block. Blot up some of this extra water. And then lastly, the Salvaged Patina. A little water here. A little bit of a shake, and then I will place this. Now, naturally, you could place this any way you want it, any way you like it. So there, that gives you a real unique background of 3 different colors. Pick your favorite color combinations and do that. Let me blot up this excess water, show you a little closer. What a fun, easy background. I don't know about you guys, but this summer has been a little bit difficult with my mojo. I've kind of lost some of the interest that I had as far as creating backgrounds. And this is one way I got myself back into doing things. Taking it back to something very simple, something very easy, something that's quick. And I thought of my acrylic blocks, the backgrounds, and that actually helped me get going again here. So again, nice little demonstration here for you to show different shapes of the acrylic blocks, how it produces. All right, let's jump into that card that I want to make. I'll give you a quick review of it. And I will bring in that previous piece that I did that's dried. All right, Now, again, as you can see, my paper has a tad bit of a warp to it, but I'm okay with that because always after I finish a card, I literally place it underneath some heavy books to help me flatten everything out. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin with Finn. Let me grab my Misty. Make sure I'm in shot for you here. And I'm going to secure this. You know what? I think I'm going to move it and try to keep it at the 1-inch mark for right now, so that when I place Finn, I have a little playroom on the edge here. See, if I would have put it in the corner, my stamp would have been up against the ruler here, and I don't want that. Now, keep in mind, when you are stamping on top of a distress oxide background, your VersaFine Clair is not going to be as dark as it typically is on a plain background. Let me show you. I hope you can see this. I'm not sure if you can, but if you look closely, some of the Distress Oxide ink can be seen through the Nocturne. I'm really okay with that. Some people are not. So what you can try to do is use like a black Sharpie marker to color over that area. Some people use chalk pencils. Some people use just colored pencils. Again, that's up to you. However you like that to be seen is how you will finish it. Okay, so let me pick up Finn, get her nice and inky. Make sure I don't have any pieces on here. Let me wipe off this extra ink. I'm going to place her down, and using my handy little tool here, I'm going to rub that hard into my paper, especially being on top of those oxide inks. All right, as you can see, I didn't get a super dark image, so the fun part, or the good part of a Misty, is that you can restamp and try for a better image. So I am going to do that, rubbing it in hard. And let's see if I get a better image this time. Oh yes, much, much better. I'm really happy with that. So get in the habit of wiping your stamps down immediately with a damp cloth. Remember, lint-free damp cloth. Clean those up. Just a great habit to be in. All right, so there's Finn. She's in place. Let me bring in the wreath. And the wreath I'm going to place, let's see, I'm going to have to move a little bit here. I'm going to drop this down now to the bottom to give me some room to work with the wreath. I always try to line it up so that I get a straight image. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the wreath overhead because I want Finn to be looking inside that wreath. I try my best, you know, the edge of this wreath, there's the bottom stem. I don't want that just sticking there because it's going to look like it's just kind of floating in space. So I take that stem, keep it off my card. That's just something I do. I'm not saying you have to do that. That's just my way of thinking. So let me pick that up. And this time I'm going to use one of my absolute favorite colors. This is Bermuda Element Inks. These inks are great to stamp with. You just need to keep in mind how wet they are. So when you go to place the ink onto your stamp, you don't want to push it in there because literally you will have ink over everything. So all I do is I tap very lightly. And even at that point, sometimes I get it on the edges. So try to do it as lightly as possible. I'm going to place that onto the card. All right, I'm pleased with that. I'm going to try to get a second print without re-inking, just to create some dimension. All right, I did get a very faint appearance in the background. I hope you can see that. I am going to add one more section of the wreath in this corner, but I'm only going to do a very small piece. So let me very lightly tap onto the stamp. I don't need to cover the entire stamp. To me, that's a waste of ink. And I'm just going to press that. Again, just giving me a little more interest here. See if I can get a little bit of a second generation. Yep, I did. That's good. All right. Let me remove that. And I'm going to reposition my my card in my MISTI. And now I'm going to create the bottom. And with that, I used the wonderful orchard grass. Hang on a second. I forgot to grab that. I didn't have that, and I didn't want you to wait as I dug through my stash to get it. So with the orchard grass, what I did is I'm just going to randomly place it along the base. And for that, I used the VersaFine Clair Morning Mist. And I am going to continue to use my MISTI for this. I definitely am a better stamper if I use my MISTI. Sometimes I use the acrylic block, but you don't need to watch me make more mistakes. So I'm going to randomly place first and second generations of the orchard grass onto the base. I'm going to vary the height of each grass and the angle of the grass. To me, if you look out into nature, you know, it's never the same. They definitely, the grasses do not grow in a perfect pattern by any means. Also remember when stamping to get some of the image actually off of your card. Again, creating interest really creates great dimension doing it that way. All right, just a few more of these I'll make you watch me do. And then we'll add the floral element. Okay, let me get another dark piece here. All right, that'll do. Wipe this off. And now I'm going to bring in this set that I said is an awesome set to have. This is that Flora set. These are just great fillers. So I'm only going to be using the small flower. And for that, I will use the Summertime. This is a great orange color. And I want to just add more interest to this base, give it a little more color. And I always try to coordinate some of my background color into my stamping. To me, it creates a cohesiveness that definitely is good for me. I like that feeling when I look at a piece of artwork or when I make a card. I have to always coordinate in some fashion so that it doesn't look too random and too chaotic. As you can see, I'm just doing first and second generation stamping. For those of you that are new, first generation stamping is the very first time you stamp after you ink your stamp. This creates the illusion of that flower being closer to me. The second generation of stamps create the illusion of a layer that is behind. So it's just a fun way to create depth in your card and dimension. All right, let's just add one more here. All right, I'm happy with the way that base has turned out. Cleaning off my stamp, moving on. I will remove my MISTI at this point. And I'm just going to work on my work surface. I do always work on a glass surface, but for filming purposes, there's too much of a reflection, so that's why I resort to this brown sheet that I work on. All right, what I want to do first and foremost is to ground Finn. I don't like the fact that it looks like she is floating in the flowers. I want it to look as if she is standing on a piece of grass. So using a piece of coffee paper, I'm going to simply rip as if I'm ripping a check out of a checkbook. I want an uneven edge. All right. And that's what this has created. If you rip the other direction, let me show you. If you rip this way, you see what happens? You get this layer, and this will tend to curl on you, and it's just kind of harder to get a well-defined line. That's why you rip in the direction that I showed you, as if you were pulling a check out of a book. I'm not going to make a huge base because I want, I want just a small little area to ground her. Now I am using a blending brush. I'm putting it into the Elements Bermuda, tapping off excess. Less is more when you do this. It's easier to build from a light layer to a darker layer. As you can see, I hope that's very light. So I will add another layer, staying close to the edge of that torn paper. And I will continue in this manner until I get it to the shade that I'm looking for. So I just want something a tad bit darker. So I'm going to add just a few more layers here. All right, that looks good to me. I like just that simple little hill for Finn to stand on. Now at this time, what I'm going to do, using the same brush and the Elements Bermuda, I am going to create somewhat of a frame, and I'm going to start off on my work surface and slowly build some color just around the top 2/3 of my card. I don't want this to be overbearing. I want just a light color, especially initially, just around. This is almost going to create a tunnel-like vision with this wreath. And it definitely draws your eye into the focal point of your card, which is Finn. I want my corners to be a little bit darker, so I'll concentrate and press a little harder in that corner area. This corner also. And now I'm just going to drop it down along the edge of my acrylic block background, just very lightly. All right, you know what? I'm going to add a little more to this corner. To me, it's not dark enough. So I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to use the graphite, and I'm only going to do this around the base of my card. So I'm going to, again, tap off because, you know, elements are super juicy, and I'm going to very lightly shade in some gray on the bottom. This time it's only about the bottom third, maybe the bottom fourth that I'm actually putting the gray on. Very light shade around the edge of my background, and my corners, I just want those to be a little bit darker. And again, the reason for that is to just draw your eye away from the edge in the corner and into the center of the card. Okay, I am happy with that. Now, the next thing I'll show you what I do, as you saw on the original card, the berries of the wreath I have painted in. And to do that, I simply take my Elements Ink in Bermuda. Let me wipe this off in case I have some gray mixed in there. I tap a little bit onto my work surface. I'm going to spritz water off to the side. You can do it directly, but I have better luck if I spritz off to the side and then slowly bring the water in. The more water you add, the lighter the shade will be. And then very simply, I add that. Again, I always start light, and I would build the layers as I need. So it's a very simple process. And I'll tell you what, the Elements ink is really easy to paint with. Makes it easier if you have a really fine brush. All right. Now, recently I did a video and someone commented about my left-handedness. I was born left-handed. No one tried to change me. I'm of that age when you went to school, they tried to force you not to be left-handed. Well, that wasn't my case. After I got my teaching job, which I was a special ed teacher for 35 years, I realized that me being left-handed was a little bit difficult for my children who sat directly in front of me to watch. All I'm doing here, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting sidetracked. All I'm doing here is adding more layers of color just to make the berry look a little darker on the bottom. But back to my left-handedness. I found out that it was difficult for my students to watch me try, especially when I'm trying to teach them how to write, right? Print, how to do cursive. It was difficult for them watching a left-hander, let alone it was basically upside down. So I taught myself to be right-handed. So a lot of times you will see me as I'm doing my work, I kind of switch back and forth my hands. Just a habit of mine because of my career. And anyway, I learned to write upside down, both in printing and cursive, which made my students' life so much easier. And I just, you know what? It was just something I did for 35 years. And I still, once in a while, find myself resorting back to flipping back and forth between hands. So for the person that asked me about it and commented about me maybe not being truly left-handed, no, I am. I just taught myself to use my right hand. Really does come in handy in some situations, I must admit. Okay, back to the card. So I've just added a few layers of that ink to create some interest in the berry so that they're just not stark white. All right, now that's where I'm going to stop this card. Now what you can do, you could take a white Signo pen and add some highlights to those, which, looking at the original, I did add some white. If you want to do that, that's fine. I even added some dangling hearts, but I don't want to continue to bore you with my creation here. But I do want to show you one last thing, and that is how I paint the wings. And to do that, again, I'm going to use that thin paintbrush. I am using the Elements Bermuda, and I'm going to use the orange, the russet orange. Now, when I do my wings, what I like to do is always use a few colors in my wings. And I, again, like I said, I always try to coordinate my colors. So if you look here in her wings, okay, there's already some orange here. And you can see some of the gray, which when the gray mixed with the orange really resembles the Bermuda. So I want to follow that pattern. I want to start with the orange. All I'm doing here is adding some water to lighten it a tad bit since it's already got some orange in it. And I'm going to just add another layer of orange to the base of her wings. Just working my way up. There's going to be a natural blending that takes place because of the Elements ink that is already directly behind the wing. So that's awesome that that's just going to happen on its own. I'm going to make more of her wing orange because I like the look of that. And I want it darker orange at the base. So I will continue to add layers of the orange until I get the shade that makes the wing pop out a little bit more. All right, somewhat happy with that. I'm going to clean off my brush just a little bit. Grab some of the Bermuda. Okay, and I'm going to make the darkest area of the Bermuda at the very tip and lighten it as it goes towards the orange. So just continuing to add those layers until I'm happy with the shade of Bermuda that I want. And simply that is it, folks. That's how I do it. Now, as this dries, this is going to smooth out a little bit. It won't be so in your face green, but it will, as it dries, get a little bit more blended. But that's pretty much it. Now, naturally, I would mount this like I did my original onto a black card, and then that would get put onto a top of a card. So that's it. I hope you give this technique a try. It's fun, it's easy, and really, if you have no clue how you want to make a background, this is just an easy way to get you started. Here, we'll look at these side by side, and you can see, as I said in the beginning, no two backgrounds will ever be the same. They will always be different. Okay, thanks. I really appreciate you watching this. I hope you give it a try. Tag me in a post. Put it in our Facebook group so that we all can see what you've done. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.